You are listening to the Place We Find Ourselves podcast. I am deeply honored to be joined today by my friend Gail Stucker. Gail, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Adam. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for volunteering to come on and have a conversation with me. You're going to share a story soon. But first, let's just start out by say a bit about who you are, where you live, what you spend your time doing.
Sure. Yeah, I am living in Park City, Utah. I'm 54 and I've just become an empty nester. Got 4 kids. I've been married for 30 years. I'd say if you want to know something about me, I've from a very young age really had a passion to set the world right. And that has come about in so many different avenues from, becoming an engineer to a campus minister to a mom and a homeschool mom, and now a story coach and a group facilitator with the Allender Center.
Let's talk story for a minute. So you're 54 years old. When did you begin to engage your story, Gail, and what prompted that?
Well, I'd say I first got introduced to the idea of my story through the Sacred Romance book by John Eldredge, probably 2 decades ago, or even a little longer. I started to write out some of my stories and just sit with them myself and with some friends. But really, in earnest, 6 years ago, I came across Dan Allender at the Restoration of the Heart conference with John Eldredge. And that was my introduction to story at a deeper and different level.
Okay. So 6 years ago, Restoration of the Heart Conference, something got moved in you to begin to engage your story more deeply. Yes?
Yes. I heard stories unlike any stories I had heard before. And the way story was handled was so different. I kind of fell down a rabbit hole looking into Dan's books and then signing up for the training program at the Allender Center.
Okay. And what was that like for you? Like to begin to engage your story more deeply? What was that like for you, Gail?
It was completely dysregulating. Um, Completely dysregulating because I really didn't. I mean, I knew I had written out stories, but I didn't think my stories were really important. And I didn't think, I mean, I just had a lot of doubt because I don't have big T trauma stories or big A abuse stories. So my stories just felt very normal and like, what's the big deal? But my body would tell a different story and I would feel all kinds of dysregulation.
Okay. So at some level, you listened to your body's dysregulation and let that take you further down what you called the rabbit hole of your own story.
Yes and no, because I listened to that and felt completely overwhelmed and almost quit a few times.
Okay.
But I learned how to stay in it long enough that yes, I mean that became data that my story actually was significant. But it took me a long time to believe that that was data that really spoke about the significance of my story.
Okay. So for someone who says, "Hey, no big T traumas, no capital A abuse stories," how did you get to the place where you really honored your story and didn't dismiss your stories as quote unquote no big deal? How did you come to honor your stories?
Honestly, I think it was sharing those stories with other people and seeing the impact on their faces because I couldn't do it myself, but watching and grappling with how other people responded with emotions I hadn't really had towards my story, compassion and kindness and anger, and yeah, like it made me pause and consider more deeply.
Yes. And that's common. That is so common to hear from people. And I can testify that's been part of my experience as well. When other people react and respond to our stories, it kind of invites us to take them a little bit more seriously.
For sure.
So for you, as you start and continue to explore your story 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, what were some of the like obstacles that got in the way? What were some of the places of blockage for you?
One is honestly just the body sensations that would almost just overwhelm me. And in my story, I learned to deal with those kind of overwhelming sensations by becoming very cerebral. I just go into my head. And then I wouldn't know how to, and this wasn't, story work wasn't something I could figure my way out of as an engineer would do with a math problem. Uh, and I felt really stuck. I mean, there wasn't a way to sort of power through. It was really to feel your way through and to learn how to feel the story and learn how to change my posture over time towards the girl in the story.
Okay, say a little bit more about change your posture towards the girl in the story.
I think I had a lot of dismissal and a lot of contempt for, many of my stories and many of the decisions that maybe I made when I was young. It's taken a long time to learn to kind of see through my younger eyes at the circumstances that I was navigating. And, part of that has been seeing other people's eyes. But that shift of, oh, that is hard. That would be, and honestly, having children of my own and at different stages, seeing through their eyes, what it's like to be a teenager, what it's like to be, younger. And that's changed my posture towards the young me in the stories that I've written.
So good. Well, would you be willing to read one of those stories now? You've volunteered.
I have. I would. Yes, this is my oral book report story. The Washington, D.C. trip was the talk of the eighth graders I knew. With good grades, we would be inducted into the National Junior Honor Society at the end of the year and invited on the trip the following spring. Not only did I make the cut, but I was elected co president, which meant I would have the honor of placing a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington National Cemetery. This would be the highlight of my freshman year. However, about that time, my parents started talking with me about their disappointment with the quality of my education and told me they were looking into a private school for the next year. The idea was confusing given my good grades and my excitement for the future. I remember the anxiety of discussing anything important with my parents because they had strong opinions about everything and weren't open to my ideas. I felt especially anxious talking with my dad, who was generally disengaged unless I fell short of his standards, in which case he would define his standards or exhort me to work harder. Apart from these types of lectures, my dad's main way to communicate was with black looks, a common experience in my family. Serious conversations happened in our formal living room. Glass French doors led from our foyer into this spacious room, proper in decor and open to our formal dining room. The living room was tall with a step down upon entering. A fancy couch with shiny thread and carved wooden legs sat between two windows on the left wall. It was a couch for discussions, not lounging. A glass topped coffee table sat in front of the couch with an armchair facing each end of the coffee table. My parents often sat in this room to work through their own tension or to discuss seemingly serious topics. Towards the end of eighth grade, my mom arranged for me to visit the private school for a day. After the long 30-minute drive, I joined a classroom of uniform clad students looking elite and stuck up. Nothing about the place appealed to me. I was a tomboy, a Jordache jeans and clumpy boot kind of girl. Plus, I had attended school with the same kids since first grade and I didn't want to start over. My school and social future hung in the balance as my parents pondered whether a new school would improve my chances in the world. I wondered why they were so worried. Apparently, I was not being challenged nor applying myself enough in school. That winter, I endured an excruciatingly long 90-minute lecture after my math grade dropped from a 92 to a 90. Dad trying to instill the importance of effort in math to long term success in life. My parents also lamented that I was not reading enough. After being in school all day, doing my homework, practicing violin for an hour and piano for a half hour, I didn't feel like reading. I wanted to play Pac Man, mess around on the computer, or watch TV. My grades were in the 90s, but I suddenly felt on the verge of failing. And I was anxious that I might lose the trip I desperately wanted, along with my friends. I was stubbornly unwilling to switch schools, but I feared I might have no choice. Conversations and negotiations ensued. I did not want to go to the new school. It would ruin my life. Eventually, my parents offered a way for me to stay at my local public school for my freshman year. I would have to read 5 hours every week and discuss what I read with my dad every Sunday afternoon. I had no other choice but to commit. My dad was a brilliant agnostic and very well read. My brother and I quizzed him on obscure dictionary words and never found one he did not know. I felt intimidated by his knowledge and his face. I longed for his delight, but felt emotional absence, and I grew to despise him for being relationally disengaged. Our book discussions took place in the living room. I put my reading log and whatever books I'd read that week on the glass top coffee table. I sat on the fancy couch while my dad sat in the armchair to my left. I loathed these meetings, hating my dad's impassive face, flat tone, and serious demeanor. I was in a never ending battle to prove my worthiness, but never could. To make matters worse, not all books seemed to count in the same way. I had become a Christian at camp that summer and signed up for Bible lessons through the mail. I was ecstatic every time a lesson arrived in our mailbox. I read it right away, filled in the return form, and sent it back immediately so I would receive the next lesson as quickly as possible. These Bible lessons taught me that a good Christian needed to read the Bible every day. So I faithfully read my Bible every day and recorded the time on my book log. This comprised most of my 5 hours of required reading each week. However, scripture didn't count like other books with my dad, and he would regularly seem disappointed or ask what else I had read. The oral book report hung over my head every week that year, along with the fear of not measuring up and the possibility of having to switch schools after all. Well, these discussions turned reading into a chore. They got me to Washington, D.C., where I placed a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier.
Hmm. Thank you, Gail. What's it like? I know you've engaged the story before, but what's it like for you to read it today?
Hmm. Well, I can feel my heart pounding and just a little shakiness in my legs, actually, just remembering the story and being in it again.
Yeah. And any sense of what the pounding in your heart is about?
Hmm. Well, honestly, there is something about exposure that is terrifying in my story and in many others. So I feel that for sure in this moment, and I think there's just a perpetual question in the story about my value, and that brings with it just a baseline anxiety.
Yes. A perpetual question about your value. So would it be okay if we just went through it together and talked through it starting kind of at the beginning?
Absolutely.
The first thing that becomes pretty clear early on is that you're like academically you're in the junior national honor society. Like you are a sharp, conscientious student who gets good grades.
Yes,
And yet the story begins with your parents talking to you about their disappointment in your education.
it does.
So what do you make of that? Like how do you understand why they're disappointed in a girl who's getting really good grades and inducted into the Junior National Honor Society?
Well, I'll say it did feel very confusing to me at the time, and I think there's background information. Both of my parents are incredibly bright individuals. My dad was British and went to Cambridge and then came over to Dartmouth and was a PhD chemist. And my mom was a professional musician studying at the Eastman School of Music and another conservatory. So there were a lot of high achievement expectations in my family as a baseline.
So you were confused. Now you're less confused. But as a girl, you were confused.
Yes, I am confused as a 13-year-old, and there are parts of me that are still confused, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Say some about the confusion still that still lingers, because I think that's common for so many of us. What's still lingering for you?
I think what lingers, I mean, one thing that lingers in this is that I'm so excited, and my parents completely miss any of my excitement. And I don't know how to make sense of that as a parent myself, who would have been very excited with my children.
Yes. That's a fantastic and awful acknowledgement. You are, as an eighth grader, like so excited about this trip.
It's the highlight. It's the thing we've been like looking forward to for a whole year. I mean, in eighth grade to get the opportunity.
And your parents' response to that is not to join you in your delight.
Yeah,
But on top of that, it's to threaten that you may not go to this trip because we might need to switch schools for you
right.
since your academic performance is subpar.
Yeah, it's exactly what it felt like.
Okay. What you write in your story is that they're worried about you, right? What was that? They're worried about your academic performance because doing good in math, doing good in school, this makes it, the way you wrote it is it improves your chances in the world. So, what was their worry like for 13-year-old Gail? What did that feel? What was that like for you to know that they were worried about you academically when you're knocking it out of the park academically?
Yeah, well, I'm again, it feels really confusing because I think I'm doing fine, and yet what am I missing that my future is at stake? Because it really did feel something of my future is at stake. So then there's also I felt a ton of pressure. I think that that was a given growing up, pressure to perform, but also the hope of maybe some attention if I performed. Like that was a way to feel like I could be seen. So there's some of that, and then there's a lot of frustration.
Yeah. But I love that you name the desire to be seen.
Yes, that was very strong in me.
Yes. What's it like to say that right now?
Well, I mean, it just was. It feels true. I did want to be seen, and it felt very difficult to not be seen. Like that was just a perpetual heartache in many parts of my story.
Mm-hmm. The way the adjective you use to describe your dad is disengaged, and that when there was engagement, it was often these stern looks, not even words, but these stern looks. What were those looks like for you, especially with a backdrop of disengagement normally?
Right. And I would say that those looks were more often directed at my mom than at me, although I did not care to receive them. And stern doesn't quite do justice. I mean, these were like murderous looks. We called them black looks. They are a thing that's talked about in the family. Like that was my dad's passive aggressive way of exerting himself, and it was common. Yeah, it was very common. And I was reflecting, this story is actually probably the most consistent engagement I ever had with my dad, but it actually felt like non-engagement with me, which is a
Yes.
crazy making like reality.
Yes, but you bring up a great, just a heart wrenching reality. As the story unfolds, the proposal, the requirement is these sessions between you and your dad, where you're going to have discussion about the required reading that you've done that week. That's the agreement.
It is.
What were those sessions like for 8th grade Gail?
Awful. I mean, honestly, I can't remember more than my dad's face and like the sense of neither one of us was enjoying this. And I definitely I can just remember sitting on the couch and ostensibly we're there to have a discussion, but it never felt like a discussion about me. I mean, it was maybe like an evaluation of what I read or a judgment over what I'd read, but not a what do you think about what you read or what caught your attention, none of that, none of the things that would really be true engagement.
Yes. And what you know, what you write in the story is, "I felt intimidated by his knowledge and his face."
Yeah, certainly. He's brilliant.
I believe you that he's brilliant, but what if I heard you correctly, you said neither one of us enjoyed these sessions.
I can't imagine he did, given how he presented, uh, and given what his face looked like.
Okay, but are you aware that he knew you were intimidated by him during these sessions?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That would be a reasonable assumption.
If there was you would challenge him with words, obscure words in the dictionary, and he would always know the definition.
Mhm.
The books that you were reading, I imagine the topics you discussed, he was up here and you were the 8th grade student who was clearly intellectually inferior.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Okay. So do you think he knew that?
He should have known that.
He should have known that. And I can't imagine he didn't take some pleasure in that superiority over his daughter.
Mm.
How's that land? I mean, I'm happy to be wrong, but how's that land?
Well, I start feeling like I have spaghetti brain when you say that. I mean, I just sort of lose a little bit of my sense of what's up and what's down.
Yeah.
Um, because there's a part of me that doesn't want to think about it like that.
Okay. Okay.
And there's a part of me that, yeah, like that really could be. But
Mhm.
I don't know that I've named it before.
Sure. Sure. What you do name in the story, at that part of the story, and it's my favorite sentence in the story, is "I longed for his delight." Like, it's just so sweet that you're able to write that
Hmm.
sentence. Say more about that, about your longing for your dad's delight.
Well, it honestly feels complicated. I did write it because it's true.
Uh-huh.
And yet I think so much of my experience at 13 was wondering what's wrong with me that my dad doesn't seem to care about anything that I care about, and that he only cares about my grades. You know, so it's a war on the inside. Like there is a true longing, and there's lots of questions about why I know nothing of this in any real sustaining way.
Mhm. And when you first engaged this story, Gail, what was your posture towards your longing when you became aware, let's put it this way, of this girl's longing for his delight? What was your posture towards that longing?
Well, I mean, when I first became aware of this story and started to engage it,
Yeah.
I'm I'm not so connected to that. I mean, I was much more connected to how much I hated my dad. And I think I've grown in being able to honor the longing that was there the more I have engaged with the parts of me that really learned to despise and hate him.
Yes. Yes. Because right after the sentence, "I longed for his delight," you confess, you acknowledge, "I grew to despise him for being relationally disengaged." How did you move, Gail? How have you moved over the past 5 years or so from awareness of the just the deep anger at his relational disengagement to a blessing of your longing for his delight? Because that shift is so huge when it comes to healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd say there's one other piece which has to do with becoming a Christian at the same time and really feeling convicted I'm supposed to be loving the people in my world. So not only do I have kind of the longing, the hatred, but I also have a whole boatload of guilt for not actually being able to love my dad in the way that I think I'm supposed to. And so I think the shift over time has been actually a learning to bless my anger, to learning to understand my anger, giving voice to why I was so angry, and then actually moving from anger to hatred and doing some of those same things with my hatred because I felt guilty for most. I've been trying to banish the hatred from me. Like that was most of my life was how do I like get this thing out of me? I'm not That's not who I want to be, and yet the path through and the path forward has actually been more in welcoming what that hatred is telling me and honoring that actually that was a way that I didn't have much agency. I didn't have a lot of choice. Like those feelings gave me a sense of agency and some sense of choice that helped me like endure a year like this. And I can say that now that wasn't even a category when I began engaging my story. I have a lot of honor, I guess, for the parts of me that have been really angry and even very hating. Because I don't know that they hated him as much as they hated that sense of lovelessness. They hated like this. I think it is honestly like your naming of the power structure with my dad. There is something of what his face represented maybe in that. Like I hated certain things that I didn't have any power over and I couldn't change. And that has been part of my healing.
It's so lovely to hear you say that in time, you began bringing some welcome to the anger,
Yeah.
to the hatred, some curiosity to it, instead of like this good Christian girl doesn't hate, so let's push it out. Let's just avoid it. Let's pretend it's not there. Over the years, you've come to acknowledge it and let it speak. Am I hearing you right?
Absolutely. I tried the banishment thing for like decades and it didn't work. It didn't work at all.
What worked?
Well, what worked has been kind of the slow practice of getting closer, paying attention and getting closer to the movements of my own heart in this story and other stories where these things are actually it's the truth of my story. I mean, like I really did feel a lot of hatred and yeah, and it's been a very deliberate. Okay, what are you telling me about? I can even put my hand on my chest at times when I feel those same things in my current life and know that there is some wisdom to be had rather than like there was somewhere along the line a shift where contempt lost some of its hold on those parts of me.
Hmm. And what would you say to the listeners who are aware of their anger, their hatred at people in their life, and it scares them? And the idea of welcoming it or listening to it or even acknowledging that it's there feels scary. What would you say to those folks?
Well, I'd say it felt scary to me too at first. And I'd say it's like a lot of data. That's where I've kind of grown and like that's my body talking to me and I want to pay attention because for me to know how to navigate the world, like there's I mean, I didn't really think my body had a lot of wisdom when I started this story work journey. And now like I trust when I feel anger that something is going on that's unjust Doesn't mean I know what to do about it,
Mhm.
but it's worth listening to. So I guess I'd tell your listeners it's worth listening to in their own lives.
Yes. And I just want to underscore what you said, that you have come to realize that the sensations in your body, in this case, anger, hatred, rage, are data,
Yeah. Yeah.
that they're telling you something about this is not okay. There's injustice here. There's something wrong here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And same with anxiety and like my racing heart and my clammy hands when I'm in those situations. It's something going on or some part of me that actually needs care in order to show up as the kind of person I want to show up as, like.
Okay, so tell me how the engineer in Gail has become a woman who pays attention to bodily sensations.
Yeah, it's so ironic because I spent most of my life trying not to feel those things because I didn't know what to do with them. And I didn't, they were overwhelming to me. And I didn't feel like they were very Christian, honestly, in the context that I was formed in. Like, that wasn't part of the equation. So it was really incredibly confusing to feel like I had a lot of sensations that I didn't know what to do with. So I just needed to somehow put them off and not feel them anymore. And it didn't work. And it came out sideways.
Back to the story. The sessions with your dad, you sum up as a never ending battle to prove my worthiness. What was that never ending battle like for an eighth grader? To prove her worthiness to someone that was very important to her, her father.
I mean, it really did feel never ending. And it's been a lot of my adult life as well. Those same feelings. I think it feels kind of hopeless when you feel like you're giving something. I mean, maybe not my all, but a lot, and actually doing quite well, but always coming up short in the eyes of the person that matters the most to me and has the power in my life. It just feels, I think it, like there's a despair there. If I'm really honest, like I don't slow down enough to be all that close to that feeling, but I think that's what's there.
Yeah, the word that jumped out to me was just the powerlessness of the endeavor.
Yeah. And I took it seriously too. I think, like there is something about my young self that I did feel powerless and I didn't give up at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had some desires too, and they were dependent on my being able to survive this arrangement.
We're coming to the end of our time, but I want to just dialogue a little bit about this eighth grader's love for God, because your last paragraph is all about these Bible studies. Like there's something so innocent, so precious about this girl getting the Bible studies in the mail, doing them, sending them back, right? And I just want to know, like, what's your posture towards that girl's love for Jesus?
Yeah. I mean, I still have the Bible lessons to this day. So that says something. My posture towards her is like she found love in those lessons. Now, if you looked at those lessons, they're actually pretty narrow and not necessarily how I would write Bible lessons for my kids. But at that point in my life, I mean, it was like water to a thirsty soul. And I mean, I came so alive, and it gave me a framework and a way forward that was more than just trying. Like my framework before that was I'm supposed to be good and go to church, and then I'm going to be okay somehow. And this gave me really like structure and a path, and this is what you do, and this is love, and I wanted love. And so I just have so much tenderness for my enthusiasm and my earnestness. I was very earnest. I wanted what was offered to be real and experienced in my life.
Yes. And your dad was not fond of your Bible reading.
He was not. No.
So what was that like for you? That, and by that I mean something that was making your heart come alive was he was not merely disinterested in, but had some animosity toward.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt maddening because we had a deal. I mean, at some level, my 13-year-old self had a deal, and I'm reading 5 hours a week. So, what in the world? Why does this not count in the same way? And it's something that, again, is really important to me, just in the same, probably at the same level of enthusiasm as the trip itself. And yet, I mean, I just feel angry thinking about it with you because he missed all of that and missed an opportunity for whatever reasons. He was more than disengaged because I did bring something of my enthusiasm
Yes.
to those meetings.
Yes. But it wasn't in the areas that he valued.
Right. Yes. And when it wasn't that, he usually didn't engage.
Mhm. So, Gail, what was it like for you to walk that tightrope of wanting the delight of your father and at some level knowing that there were certain topics that were more, he was more apt to be responsive to, but you brought Bible reading? How do you understand that eighth grader?
Well, I actually think she's pretty tenacious, and I like her tenacity. I mean, yeah, I mean, I do look back with a lot of admiration because I think it took a lot of courage to show up each week
Hmm.
and know that it wasn't going to be well received.
Yes. Yeah, tenacity is a good word. But not just tenacity, you had to contain a lot of dysregulation to get through those sessions.
Yeah, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I was good at it by then.
Last question, your posture towards this eighth grader. How has it shifted since you've started engaging your story?
I mean, I'm proud of myself in this story in ways that I used to just wonder what I could have done to have garnered my dad's attention in a way that was positive. You know, like what could I have done? Could I, like a lot of those kind of questions. I don't have those questions so much anymore. I have a lot of respect for just the fight in me to show up each week.
Mhm.
I also, I can see now that I learned, and not just through this story, but through many, to basically publicly appease while privately containing and hating and doing, feel like all of those things were very internal. And I do have a lot of compassion for what it took to kind of do both of those, to put my desires somewhat on hold. I mean, they were always like the fuel in the background, but at some level, my desires had to go on hold so I could meet expectations so that I could get the desires back. But there was a lot on the inside that was very private and very loud. That,
Mm.
yeah, it was part of, and I can honor that she had to do that in order to make things work in this world.
Mm. Gail, thank you so much for sharing this story, coming on the podcast, dialoguing with me about this tenacious eighth grader.
It's been an honor. Thanks for the opportunity to bring a story and talk with you.
If listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I am available on email. It's Gail at healingthroughstorywork.com. And there's a website with the same name, www.healingthroughstorywork.com.
Healingthroughstorywork.com. Okay. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.